with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Good morning and welcome to Gel with Allie, Growing Edge Live. I am so happy to be here today, and I have my very favorite guest with me today, my amazing, beautiful spiritual partner and husband, Michael Benjamin. And we're changing things up a little bit today. Typically, I do an interview with a soul-centered individual that is channeling their time, their talent, their energy, their resources, their love into doing good works. And yes, my husband absolutely does that. But we're taking it in a little bit of a different direction. So here he is, Reverend Michael Benjamin.
And good morning.
Good morning. And you can see we're not together. We're in different locations. And so we'll get to that. But I want to welcome you to this Growing Edge Live, this broadcast where we get together every Monday to connect, to share spiritual insights, to dive into the lives of individuals that have organized their lives around their spiritual purpose, their vision, and bring amazingness to the world. And so thank you for being here. I trust and know wherever you are that you remember how loved you are and how creative you are. And I trust and know that this conversation today will absolutely touch your heart, inspire your mind, and transform your life, which is always our vision here at Satya. So welcome, Michael.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back. It's so
where
good
are
to be
you?
here.
Where are you?
I am in Citrus Heights, California, Sacramento area, and currently on my work schedule. So yeah, I work, as you know, and many do, I work in the Sacramento area. And although we live in Utah, I do spend 16, 18 days or something like that here.
Yeah, it's interesting to not live together for most of the month, and it makes those times that we do spend together really special, and we seem to be able to pack a lot of fun and activity and connection time when we do get together. And so yeah, thanks for being there in the Sacramento area and doing all that you do there. And we're going to talk a little bit about exactly what you do, because your job isn't exactly your job. It's more of your ministry. And yeah. I don't know that your clients know that, but they probably do come away from every interaction they have with you knowing that something happened. I've been touched by an angel here.
Yeah, well, I hope that is true, and I do often hear that. So I think it is. I think once the practitioner heart opens up, it always is. It's part of my daily routine. It's part of what I do every morning before I go into the office or before I start to go out on calls and meet new people. And I always, am mindful to consciously open up my heart. How must I serve? How can I serve today? So.
Well, we're probably jumping a little bit ahead of our conversation. I think it would be nice to sort of do what I usually do with my clients and talk a little bit, both of us talk a little bit about how we got to be where we are. And if you didn't see the past show with Michael and I highly encourage you to check that out, because Michael talks about his spiritual journey, some of his mystical moments as a child, and an NDE that he had, and the fact that he was talking to God or the universe or higher wisdom, whatever you want to call it, at a very young age. And that actually used to freak his parents out. Well, his mother loved it, and his dad was a bit scared of that kind of spirituality, if you will. So if you have a chance, I encourage you to go back and watch that show with Michael and I. And so we thought that I'd take some time to talk about my path and how I got to be so interested in the awakening journey, everything spirituality, and how I got to be where I am now. And I think for me, as you may tell, I have an accent, and I grew up in England. And at the age of 5, my parents separated, and my mother moved to America, and my father stayed in England, and so did I. And so at that age, 5 years old, it was a very standout time for me. It's a time that I remember exquisitely well. And it was because all of the turmoil and the drama of a divorce, and my mother moving away, and that was very emotionally challenging for me as a child. And during that time, I remember having this deep mystical moment. It was a time where I was experiencing great sadness because I was visiting my mother. She had already left the house, and I was visiting her. She had come over from America, and we were staying with friends. And I remember being in this guest bedroom, and I remember laying down on the bed and just feeling really sad and confused and really emotional and really worried about what was going to happen to me. And so I lay down on the bed, and I had this mystical moment, this moment of oneness. And it's so vivid in my mind. It's as though it just happened yesterday. And it's always been with me. It sort of comes to my awareness regularly, actually, more than I'm really realize. Now I'm actually talking about it. And this mystical moment still informs me. It's as though it was a message from the universe, or a opening up to my higher self. And in meditation or times of contemplation, when I'm thinking about it, I can actually go back to that time. And when I say go back to that time, it's really not going anywhere. It's accessing this deeper connection that I have with my higher self, that was opened, like a door opened for me during this time that I'm laying on the bed. I'm my 5-year-old little self. And I had it came with visual. And so what it looked like for me was this visit into the cosmos. It was like supernovas and experiences where I didn't have a body. I wasn't physically located inside a human body. I was in a different dimension. I was in a mystical dimension where, for whatever reason, I had a lot of imagery of the cosmos, what you would see, or what I would see later, much later in my life, as images from telescopes, from satellites, where we see stars and supernovas and planets. And that's where I was during this mystical time. I don't know how long it lasted. It felt like it lasted a long time, maybe half an hour, but I can't be sure now. It's been so long. I'm 61, and this is when I was 5 years old. But I was not in a body. I was having this experience of being connected to everything, cosmically, that I had a sense that everything was just as it is. Like there was nothing wrong, there was nothing missing. There's just an isness, a presence that I was tuning into, tapping into, that gave me a sense of there's more going on than me and my little 5-year-old body with my particular family in my particular life. And so I didn't articulate all of this as a 5-year-old. It was sort of instantaneous. I just had this like activation that everything's going to be okay. There's more going on than your human personality realizes. And so that waking up, if you will, that moment of expanded consciousness stayed with me. Now, it didn't completely cure me from worry and fear and doubt and feeling abandoned, because my mother did end up leaving, and I would only see her probably once a year until I turned 14. And so there were many years of dealing with not having a family that was there for me. I went to boarding school at age 7, and so I was really left to my own devices a lot, left to support myself emotionally and physically. And I learned to do that the best I can, and I developed ways of feeling comforted or feeling safe or feeling grounded. And a lot of that had to do with nature. I grew up an only child in the countryside in Oxfordshire, and so I would spend a lot of time in nature. And that's really where I tuned in to this mystical side of me, this place where I could feel at one with the universe, this place where I could feel guidance. I definitely was influenced by a lot of the English folklore and fairy tales. And so I had a deep relationship with the fairies and the angels and the plants. I definitely would feel that they were my friends, and that somehow we were in this thing together. And there wasn't such a distinction for me between human beings and the more, the elementals. And so for me, being outside, being in nature has always been a way that I feel very connected to my life's purpose. And my life's purpose has really evolved over time based on these early experiences of the mystic, the divine, God showing up in all things, all places, especially in nature. I began to feel that part of my purpose was to help others to feel connected to this deeper part of that themselves, this mystical part of themselves that is beyond time and space, and that includes time and space, sort of a merging of the personality with the essential self, the higher self. So that really was the sort of spark that got me interested in having the awareness of being a spiritual being and having a human experience. It came about at a very early age. And I'd like to say it stayed with me, and it was online, and I was this, awakened being that sort of transcended physical struggle. That wasn't the case. I definitely dove into the world of feeling sorry for myself, of looking for love in all the wrong places, of feeling victimized by the world. But there were always those opportunities to have the comfort of that early experience that everything is going to be okay and everything is right on track. And although you don't understand this thing that you're doing here on earth, it will all be revealed to you over time. That was the overarching message of this early, mystical experience. And then as time went by, I would continue, especially in my early 20s, when I became really really interested in everything new thought. Well, not new thought, more new age, everything crystals, everything to do with the mystical, everything to do with channeling. I really got into that and really started deep diving into the teachings of the East and understanding about the energy within us, the chakra system. I started seeing auras at that time and being able to pick up on other people's energy, which was extremely exciting to me. And so during that time of my early 20s, as I was seeking, as I was exploring, I began to do a lot of sort of astral traveling, meditating, and going to other places in my meditations. And that was extremely exciting and very woo-woo. I would never talk about this with anyone else. This was all my own personal discovery. Actually, there was one person I talked to, and that was my mother-in-law from my previous marriage. My mother-in-law, Connie, she was really into this stuff too. And so her and I would share our mystical experiences. And at some point, I'll talk more about that because I did have some really scary, confusing moments where I made contact with this guide that has always been with me, which has been another way that has blessed and supported me on my spiritual path. So anyway, getting back to this early 20s, mid 20s, actually, I discovered I went to a swap meet, and I found this woman that was selling all of this stuff, and it was all to do with the stuff that I'm interested in. And I picked up the book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And that book really resonated with me, and I read it, and it talked about how we are affected by our childhood, why we have the triggers and the pain that we have in our lives, because there's unresolved feelings and beliefs associated with our childhood. So I did a lot of healing at that time. And this connection with Louise Hay, who was someone that lived in the area I was living in, San Diego County in California. And I found out that she was a minister, a New Thought minister of religious science. And so I asked this woman that was selling all this stuff, I said to her, because we were talking about Louise Hay and talking about New Thought, and I asked her, well, where does one find out about this movement? And she sent me to the Vista Church, the CSL there. Actually, it was the United Church of Religious Science, Vista. And I went there and I was just blown away. I instantly, the minister there was Reverend Brian Anderson and his wife, Reverend Sheila Anderson. And we became, I became really connected to them and their message. And every time I would go, I remember the first time I went, that's when I first started seeing auras and colors. And I just couldn't believe it, that every time there was someone on the platform, especially a singer, the colors that would come out with the music, with the words that were being spoken were just phenomenal. I was just so blown away. I was, it was right up my alley, having another mystical experience of seeing things that most people don't see. It was a transcendent moment every time I went to this church. And so that really opened me up. And that's where I really became a student of Dr. Ernest Holmes. And that sort of led me on my path to becoming a practitioner. And that's kind of where Michael and our journey connected. So after I was in San Diego County, I divorced my first husband and moved to Big Bear Lake with my three little ones, Adam, Alexandra, and Christopher. And my first search, if you will, of what was going on in Big Bear was to look for a religious science church. And I found one, and it was called, I don't know the name of it at the time, but over years, the name of that center changed. And most recently, it was known as the Bear Valley Center for Spiritual Enrichment. And so I started going to this church. It was held in a tiny little building, and I met this amazing woman. She was sort of the greeter and the hospitality person, and her name was Carolyn. And she was just this really grounded, centered, peaceful, angelic presence woman that I began to form a friendship with. And so her and I became friends. And several years into our friendship, I remember being at church. The church moved from small little building to bigger building. We had different ministers that came and left, and Carolyn and I maintained this friendship. And I remember complaining to her one day. I had gone out on a date with someone that was just, not that nice, and I was sort of moaning and groaning to her, telling her about this, that I'm over dating, I'm over men, I'm just going to be focusing on my kids, my family, my spiritual life, and forget, that. And I was early 30s. And she said to me, and Carolyn was only about 15 years older than me. She said to me, well, don't worry, dear. My son's coming to Big Bear in a few weeks, and you'll meet him and he'll take your mind off of things. And I thought, good grief, how old is your son? Because, I can't believe you're even bringing this up or mentioning this to me as I'm telling you that I've had it with men. And she just chuckled, and she had a sort of a wicked sort of streak to her and a sense of humor. And I didn't think too much of it. I just kind of brushed it aside as her making small talk with me. Nevertheless, it was still in the back of my mind, because Big Bear is a very small community, and everyone sort of knew each other. And so I would definitely know if there was a new younger person that would come to our church. And so kind of brushed it aside, but it was still there in my mind. Anyway, this is kind of where I'm going to invite you, Michael, to come in.
Well, unless you didn't happen to show up on a Sunday when this said person, happened to be there.
Yeah, and by the way, I wasn't going to church on Sundays very much, because I was building up. I was a hairdresser at the time, and I was building up my clientele. And so I took Sundays to be a work day, because nobody else wanted to work on Sundays. And I can be very driven and goal oriented. And I was just going to work every Sunday until I had a whole list of people, a whole book full of people that would come. And yeah, but so I wasn't.
Well, I mean, and interesting, because none of that came by way of my mom. Like, my mom, she never said anything to me. And
yeah, and if you haven't guessed, Carolyn's Michael's mother, by the way.
Yeah, and when I started to really have my spiritual growth, was also sort of at a difficult place, and I started to ask expanding questions. Even to a mother, it would have sounded a bit victim, a little bit blame-ish, where I maybe approached her and said, how come you didn't teach us more about life, money, business, credit cards, all these things? And because I'm making a mess out here and so forth. And she said, "Oh, honey, everything's going to be okay. Come with me. There's somebody I want you to hear." And she brought me to the center to hear this positive, uplifting message about how you can heal your life, right? And by way of Dr. Warren Chester, and I was like really turned on by the message, and everything I heard really brought like a truth vibration to it. And so I was like, okay, well, fast forward a few months when that move to Big Bear occurred for me. Mom was in Mexico and on holiday with her girlfriends, and I woke up on Sunday and said, well, I guess I'll go to that place. So I went, and then he made an invitation from the pulpit about joining the book club Tuesday night at his house. And I made a mental note. I didn't sign up or make any commitments. And on Tuesday, I didn't have anything more pressing, and I really felt desire. And so unannounced, I just showed up. And
yeah, and Warren had called me at work the day before and said, you should come to the discussion group where reading The Science of Mind, and I think you'd love it. And at that point on my spiritual path, I was always paying attention to God speaking to me through other people, the universe knocking at my door and giving me invitations. And so I said, well, I've got my children and I don't think they would really enjoy it. And he said, bring them. And so I did. I brought my little ones and they watched TV in the other room. And meanwhile, here's this young guy and two other people, the minister and the board president, Sally. And the four of us sat around the table in his kitchen and had this discussion about science of mind.
yeah, and it was, really, I think as I was just reflecting, I remember in the weeks leading up to it that I was surrendering. Didn't even know the word really surrender, but I was surrendering into like what I knew was going to be a transformation. I was going to get reprogrammed, and yeah, that's where we met, and really that's where you know it was the beginning of so many new chapters and so many experiences that we had. Being 9 years younger, um, I'm sure it wasn't easy for you to uh, be involved with somebody that was kind of at the beginning, where I was still living so many of my stories, so many of the beliefs that I had that um, probably my heart was guarded, and there was lots of things that I remember you over the years being my mentor, being not only my love but my one of my teachers and my mentors. I mean, you would call me out and invite me to expand that circle, and I'm sure being spiritual partner was something that really took time for us to develop
Yeah,
because
and I think you're right. But I was at a particular point in my life. I was 33, you were 24, and I had really surrendered. I'd had to sort of let go of a lot, and I was really in that place of I had a meditation practice. I was really listening to that inner guidance. I was really doing a lot of work to integrate my ego and my essence. And I felt at the time, even though that you were so much younger, and even though you hadn't been on a spiritual path, there was something, my inner wisdom was saying, this is your path. This is your person. And that was, my ego didn't like that. My ego had all kinds of stories running. He's too young. He's too immature. He's not your type. There was so much, but I was at such a point where I couldn't not listen to that voice inside me that says, stay the course here. There's more that will be revealed. Anyway, there will be more revealed. We're going to go to a quick break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about, how we've developed as spiritual partners and the ups and downs of that path. So stay with us, and we'll see you in just a minute or two.
Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe DeMuro. And now,
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
We're back, and I'm
Hi.
here with my favorite spiritual partner, Michael, and we're talking about our story, and we're about to sort of transition into what it looks like today to be spiritual partners. And I know that you and I, having been together for almost 30 years now, we have always connected in the spiritual conversation, in the science of mind, the practitioner heart, if you will. So what that looks like for us is every day, even when we're not together, as we're not at the moment, we have a spiritual practice in the morning of meditation and contemplation and journaling. And we've always maintained that, even through the rocky times, even through times of family drama and family trauma, losses, changes in work and financial situations and moves that we've had to make, and all kinds of ups and downs that our relationship has been. And I know if you're watching, you can relate to this. We all have these transitions and these movements throughout our life as we go through the changes, and we grow and we expand. And so we've always been able to connect there with this common understanding of how important our spiritual life is, and to be together and check in with each other and have. And some years ago, we read the book together by Gary Zukav called Spiritual Partnership. And he defines it as a partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth in order to create authentic power. And so, how's that been for you, Michael? How's this idea of spiritual partnership, and you were touching on it just before the break, that may not have always been as easy for me because I had been involved in my spiritual path for a decade or more before I even met you. But how's spiritual partnership been for you, and how was that for you coming into a relationship with someone that was so intensely focused on spiritual evolution and expanding and awakening?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say, it is really about creating authentic power. And we, to meet to be effective in this, we really are revealing our truth, that which has always been and that which will always be. But having said that, boy, the domestication, the programming, the stories, the habitual things that we pick up, in our life, can be difficult to, there's this like continuous cleaning sort of thing that has to occur. And, uh, I wanted to say that, in the science of getting rich, Wallace D. Wattles, one of the things that they talked about was to have a small circle, a couple people that you can have this agape sort of love, this real, transparent, put down the BS sort of, you know, uh, um, relationships that we have with most of the people that we meet in life, right? We don't meet everybody and have this deep and profound sort of radical love. We do kind of play this, we're going to be appropriate out here in the world and not call everybody out on their stuff all the time, right? But in having somebody, having a beloved, having somebody, it doesn't have to be your spouse, it doesn't have to be your wife or your life partner per se, but definitely it is helpful to have, one or two or a small circle, that you can have real and authentic conversations, about supporting each other on the journey of growth and expanding the circle while we're, growing.
Yeah. And so something that we have always had as a practice is being very clear with our intentions, and also visioning, having a real understanding of the life that we want to experience and the people that we want to be. And so we've been able to do visioning together, create intentions together, and hold each other accountable within our partnership to walk the line, or have our thoughts, our words, our actions line up with those things that we've declared, those prayers that we've shared with one another, our prayer requests, our purpose statements. We've been over the years, we've developed a practice of having a purpose statement in common. And so I think that's a really wonderful thing, maybe like a first step when you find someone that you would like to have as a prayer partner or a spiritual partner, someone that you're willing to be completely open and vulnerable and supportive of, and allow that person to support you. And maybe this kind of partnership isn't all about constantly, being positive and supporting each other in that, but sometimes it's being able to point out those things that, the shadows or the things that other isn't seeing. And so it's important, I believe, within this kind of relationship, this spiritual partnership, to have a common purpose statement. And so you and I created one. Do you want to share a little bit about that and the sweetness of how that all unfolded and how it's impacted us as a couple and our family?
yeah. It's been amazing. We don't have time in the next 15 minutes to go through all that we've been through as a family, and I just will preface it with this. What in this human journey, there is heart-wrenching loss. We're going to have chinks in the armor, and when life kicks you in the behind, and takes you by surprise, so to speak, we can lose our groundedness, right? We can lose our connection to who am I and what am I doing. And I'm not sure everybody goes through what we went through, Allie, but what has come out of our creating it, we created out of a necessity. We were driving down the road on like an 8 or 10 hour journey or something, and we were really at a place of needing to find something that we could hold on to. And out of that journey, through the vision, through our visioning, and through our, having a common understanding of where we've been and where we are now and where we're, casting our, direction. We wrote a purpose statement, and it says, together with our hearts wide open
on
our joyful
adventure,
inspired, elevated, and grateful. Yeah. And it's something that I know we repeat to each other often. I know I repeat it to myself every day as part of my opening up my altar. And it really is a connecting, sort of like, we are a unified front. We are connected. No time and space in the light, in the ethers and consciousness, that we're co-creating this together, that we're living and moving and having our being in the same thing. We are a family, where we earn that.
Yeah. And I know that, Michael's such a sensitive, and he's an Enneagram 2, and he can't help but be helpful and to have such connections with other people. And for us, you didn't mention it, but we lost our son 5 years ago, and we lost Adam to suicide. And so when you say, we were at a place where, the ground had sort of fallen away, and we were really trying to build something to connect in a way that we could be strong for our family, for Christopher and for Alex and our 3 beautiful grand girls, and to sort of stay strong and connected, and to be able to know that Adam's life and his legacy lived on in us. We needed to be strong for each other in order to have that consciousness and to keep moving, because at the time we were serving 2 churches. We had our spiritual center in Ogden, Utah, the thesatyacenter, and we had the Bear Valley Center for Spiritual Enrichment, where I was the co-spiritual leader, and Michael was on the board of directors and one of the practitioners there. So we had a big responsibility to these communities and to our family to keep our stuff together, to maintain this strength that people had come to know us as that couple that shows up at the conferences and the retreats and sitting in the front row of the churches as a unified couple that was deeply grounded in the principles of science of mind, of new thought, ancient wisdom, that we, not that we would, brush it all aside and kind of keep all of our pain and our sadness under wraps. We shared that appropriately with our communities, but we maintained this connection, this trust in life, and this joy and beauty and wisdom that we could still access and harness that authentic power that we have to continue to do good works in the world, continue to be a beneficial presence. And during this time where we created this statement, it was such a powerful moment in that healing journey for us. And we, together, hearts wide open on our joyful adventure, inspired, elevated, and grateful. That has been, so much has come out of us forming that statement, speaking that statement out loud, and bringing that into every relationship, every conversation, every spiritual community that we have. It is, so much has happened. If we had got consumed by our grief, if we had just given up and, drank ourselves into oblivion, or whatever we could have done, stopped serving our spiritual communities and just succumbed to the grief. I dread to even imagine, but that statement kind of was the thing that kept us engaged, connected at that level with what our hearts know is possible for us.
Yeah, that another term that really is meaningful too is, this is what it feels like when it's all coming together. And it's an interesting thing, because that ego essence wants to hold on to things forever, like everything's permanent, right? But the reality is everything's always changing and always expanding and always growing. And it's like we're in this together, right? And this statement, if you really look at what it says, and that we really emote into that statement, right? We're together with our hearts wide open on a joyful adventure, inspired, elevated, and grateful. And that statement really helps me to find my footing right where I am, because this is what it feels like when it's all coming together, and it's never going to be the same. It's always changing. But on the spiritual partnership, like, what I've been able to experience in beginning to kind of know you and see you grow and change through the lowest of lows and the highest of highs, and building community and leading with volunteerism. And we know there's always challenges and so on and so forth. But it's like there's a particular connection that I have to you, that I know that you're experiencing your next greatest yet to be. And I really feel moved by it when I see you do your thing. And it could be difficult conversations that you have to have with people. It could be, standing on the top of a mountaintop, meditating. It could be doing fire ceremony when I dropped you off that time out in the middle of the Utah place with Shen, and I left you to do a 3-day vision quest where you were completely fasting, no water, no food, and you were going to be in the dark, and I didn't know how to get back there. Like it was just like, but there was a particular like I'm there with you, not only in the consciousness, but I mean, I know that you're doing what is necessary for your evolution.
And me too. I feel that, we've been able to tolerate living apart. We've been apart now for 2.5 years, living in different states.
Oh, come on. I mean, we're together every couple weeks. I mean, anyhow, I get it. Go ahead.
Well, now I've lost my train of thought. This is something that we always bump into. I'm on a roll, and Michael has to interject, and then I completely forget what I'm saying. I think it was something to. Oh yeah, I know what I was saying. Having this statement together, hearts wide open, on our joyful adventure, inspired, elevated, and grateful. It gives me the confidence and the fire in me to see you right where you are, even though we're not together, even though I know that there you are in our beautiful Om Shanti home, our camper van that you're living in at the moment. And that's not the most comfortable place to live. It's tiny, and the bed, although it's comfy, it's not as comfy as our bed at home. And so I know that you're out there, you're doing what you need to do to bring in an income and to support us and our family. And what I know is that statement, and just knowing how you're on your path, that you're on your evolutionary journey, the work you do, and I talked about this at the beginning, although you may be in sales, although you may be in helping people with home improvements, you're also an angel in disguise, that you show up as the presence of light and love in the midst of people's homes. And that can be a very vulnerable place for people as they let someone they don't know to come into their home. I mean, you've seen it all, and you've told me about it. Some people have issues with hoarding and holding on to things. Some people have, lost loved ones, and they don't know, that they booked an appointment with your company because they're lonely, and it's not even that they want any home improvements. They just want a conversation. So what I love is knowing that my husband's on his adventure. He's out there mingling and mixing with people and showing up in people's lives. And I know you can't help but share your message of truth, your message of love and acceptance, and of supporting them and seeing them right where they are. And, it's just kind of a side benefit that you are also, a number one salesman in your company, so it's not that you're just out there having warm, fuzzy conversations and showing up as an angel in disguise. You're also really supporting and helping people, beautify their lives and get their home in fully functioning, well-maintained state. And so that statement, our intention, our purpose statement really helps me to be your best cheerleader, knowing that, I don't know exactly what the universe has in mind for you. You don't know exactly what the universe has in mind for me. We don't know exactly, but we're on the same page. We're cheering each other along. We're going to point out things to each other if we see each other slipping off from our intention and our purpose. And that can be a bit tough sometimes. We have egos. We can get our feathers ruffled by each other, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, we've managed to create a beautiful relationship that I know we touch the lives of a lot just by the way we show up as so accepting
Yeah.
and loving of each other.
Yeah, no, I think it's so critical, because I know that people feel alone, right? But we're not really physically alone because we're commingling with 7 billion other humans, right? And we have neighbors and everything else. But the truth is, one or two or three profoundly and deeply meaningful relationships where we're coming together for the purpose of creating authentic power, where we're really sharing hearts wide open, and our shortcomings and our things that we need to work on, and all the things that we've done for decades. um it's transformative. It is what is transformative, because it has allowed for you and for me, speak for myself, to be able to say no when I mean no and yes when I mean yes. And I was always a yes man, and it's not easy for me to say no. And so to be able to, Reverend Gene Sweet, no is a complete sentence, but in many ways, that's spoken from a woman who's been down her journey for decades and understands that. But people pleasing was one of my tapes, right? Was one of my belief systems, and so I know
You're muted, I think.
willingness.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Sorry. um the growth that occurs through the willingness to take the steps forward that we need to take, not necessarily the ones that we've always taken or the one that the ego thinks we want to take, right? But has just been so special. And I fall in, realize support from you, and I know you get it from me, and together we grow.
We do. So we are here at the end of our time, my love, and um, as most of you could probably tell, we just love to connect
two
and
of
talk,
two
share.
two of 10 questions, right? Yeah.
So we'll probably pick this up at another time. And if
Mm,
you out there, people watching, have a question or want to continue this conversation about spiritual partnership and how to do it, and please send them in, because we would love to explore this topic more. And thank you, Michael, for being my guest today here on Gel with Ali. And thank you to New Thought Media Network. And thank you to you, our beloved audience, for watching. We wouldn't do this without you. And next week, I'm really excited to share another amazing friend, another amazing Michael with you. I've got my dear friend, Reverend Michael Gott, is coming on to Gel with Ali. So we'll see you next week. Love and blessings to you wherever you are. Peace around the world. And thanks to our producer, Michael. All the
yeah.
Michaels.
Yep.
Bye. Thank
Thanks.